Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world away from the numbers.
Oh, when a snowman comes to town, I put on my dressing gown, and little Frank puts his matching dressing gown body on too.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show. I'm your host, Michael McCall, and we're doing things a little bit differently this episode. No live show from the CITR studios due to the snow, with Steve and Zach having to come in all the way from the interior, well, Surrey and Abbotsford. But with the guys being out there and the snow being pretty bad and the temperatures due to drop very late at night when we would be heading home, decided that we would do this show from the AFTN studios, which sounds a lot fancier than it actually is, of me sitting in the bedroom with my microphone and getting the guys on the phone to chat all things Whitecaps and a few other things as well. It's not been the busiest weeks for the Whitecaps yet again. There has been some new additions, both on and off the pitch, so we're going to look at that in this episode. We're also going to hear from the Whitecaps' first round draft pick in Thursday's MLS Super Draft, Ryan Raposo. Got a chance to sit down and chat with him on Thursday afternoon after the draft. So we'll look at what his addition might mean to the team, how many minutes we think he might get in the team this season, which is obviously hard to tell just now because there's still a big lack of playing personnel in the Whitecaps roster for the upcoming season. We'll also chat about some of the rumours that are going around the Whitecaps right now. But first off, we want to look at a big addition that took place off the pitch. The Whitecaps have a new CEO. Now, it's been a little bit of an under-the-radar appointment. There had been murmurs that the Whitecaps were looking for a CEO as well as a sporting director. There's a lot of fanfare made in November with the appointment of Axel Schuster as the club's first sporting director. He's been the guy that's been taking part in a lot of the interviews and press conferences in the build-up to the pre-season kicking off on Saturday. But the appointment of a CEO was something which the Whitecaps, I feel, have needed for a long time. And the man to get that job, hired as the club's chief executive officer, is American Mark Panis. Now, Panis will report to ownership and will oversee all the business aspects of the club, with Schuster taking charge of all the kind of playing aspects of the club and also answering to ownership, with Mark DeSantis working hand in hand with Axel Schuster. Now, Panis' appointment looks to be a really good appointment. They've got a very strong and experienced CEO, a guy that has worked at the highest level of sport, both in North America and over in Europe. Spent 10 years with the New York Knicks, and that included 3 years as Vice President of Marketing with them, where he oversaw all ticket and sponsorship revenue, brand management for the team. And he has done so many jobs for the Knicks in that 10 years, kind of working his way up, doing a lot of the roles in the organisation. That's something that Jeff Mallett alluded to when he was introducing Mark at a media roundtable on Tuesday. He's also been the director of a global sports group for HSBC Private Bank in London, managing funds of over $1 billion and for 500 plus athletes and institutions across the world of football, Formula One, rugby, tennis, golf, cricket, and a lot more beside. And he did that from 2006 to 2011. Football-wise, he's got experience over in Italy with Serie A club AS Roma. He spent 6 years with Roma from 2011 to 2016, holding numerous positions, including the CEO of the club and the president of the club's IP licensing business. He was also the CEO and project lead for the Stadio della Roma from 2011 to 2016, which, when he left, the stadium still hadn't been built, and to this day, the stadium hasn't been built, but that's something we can maybe talk to Panis about at some point in the future as to the issues that he's had with that. But he comes to Vancouver with an absolutely fantastic resume, and the appointment of a CEO is never really that exciting in addition to the majority of fans, because the business side doesn't really interest a lot of people. They just really care what's happening on the pitch. But he's come in with a wealth of experience, probably a wealth of contacts as well, and he talked a lot at the media roundtable on Tuesday about wanting to turn the Whitecaps into a global brand. So let's just hear a little bit now from Mark Panis, some of the stuff that he said on Tuesday, and just talking about his desires and his wishes to expand the Whitecaps beyond Canada, beyond North America, and make them a team that players want to come to, a team that supporters around the world want to follow, and financially, a team that businesses around the world, big businesses around the world, want to invest in. Here's new Whitecaps CEO, Mark Panis.
I'm honored to be CEO of this club. I think there's a tremendous amount of upside here. Like I look at this and say, we've got committed ownership, you got a stable and sophisticated senior staff, but also all the way down on both the business side and on the technical side. And then we have pretty amazing facilities out at UBC. And tremendous sophistication in the organization from the kind of the youth pyramid all the way up on the technical ops side. And then I look at BC Place, and we're not an MLS team that's constrained by a 22 or 25,000 seat building. As I was doing my research for this opportunity, one of the things that really stood out for me was that when the city of Vancouver was half as large as it is today, it was able to draw, on occasion, upwards of 50,000 people. And there's a 54,000 seat stadium there. So, and there's a lot of customization possible with the sales structure. So whether we're drawing 25 or 30 or 35 or more, we have that capability. So there's flexibility there to create a really intense home pitch advantage. And that's also something that's very appealing.
New York, Rome, the Knicks, Roma, these are huge names in global sports.
Yeah.
Here in the village of Vancouver, how do you feel about that transition? What made you think that this was the job that, as Jeff said, you really wanted?
Well, so I'm a big believer in a kind of a marquee club in marquee cities. And it's unquestionable that Vancouver is a marquee city, and it really sits at a nexus. It's part of the Commonwealth. So there's a 50-plus country network that we're going to be able to have a presence in. And then it sits on the Pacific Rim as a gateway. And, there aren't really, this is the city that has that. That's very unique as a combination. It allows us to reach into Asia for fans and players. It allows us to reach into the Americas for fans and players, and it allows us to reach into Europe and Africa for both. It's a very unique combination, and there's a lot of stability here at the ownership level, which is so. Oftentimes, the clubs I've worked at, I've been fortunate enough that when I've arrived first as a very junior person in New York and get to learn a lot observing, although I spent a decade there, but at the beginning, you see clubs at an inflection point. They're ready for really, really significant growth. And there's an old line that says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and it sure sounded like it was rhyming here.
So as someone with extensive marketing and business background, what do you think your biggest challenge is going to be starting right now?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously we want to fill the building, right? And so when we say fill the building, it's it's configured for mid to high 20s. We want to fill that, obviously. So selling tickets is a challenge, right? I think the league has new media deals coming up, and Jeff, I know, I think you believe you chair that committee. So there's some anticipation that comes along with that, but also the deals for Canada are going to be a little bit different than the U.S. deals as part of that, right? So there's a series of things that will be going on there. For sponsorship, I think that's one area we'd really love to bring in some global partners. I mean, that was something I think that sent a real significant signal to the marketplace when we were at Roma. We brought in Nike for our kit deal. We did a deal with Disney. We did a deal with Volkswagen, major global brands. And so those were very, very catalytic in making things tangible for fans and signing players, and I think I've got to tell you, the ability to be working like joined at the hip with Axel is pretty awesome, because his reputation globally is outstanding.
So Mark Panis there saying a lot of interesting stuff about the Whitecaps, how he sees them advancing in the future, the growth aspirations that he's got. And from what he said on Tuesday at that round table and at various things since then, this is not a guy that's going to sit in his hands. He's said he's not a guy that's just coming in to observe. He's going to be busy. He's not going to make change for change's sake, but he wants to grow this organisation, and basically that's what he's been brought in to do, that's what he's paid to do, and his success will be judged on how big he can grow the Whitecaps off the pitch. And obviously a lot of the growth off the pitch can be linked with on the pitch, but his lofty aspirations, that's good to see. And to talk a little bit more about what Panis brings to the Whitecaps and what we can maybe expect from him in the future and what this appointment means to the club and the front office is regular AFTN co-host Zachary Adam Meisenheimer, who is out in snowy Abbotsford. How is it out in the interior, Zach?
Actually, it stopped snowing the last time I checked, but I'm probably going to pick up again, and probably going to get a little bit cold and icy out here.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very chilly week, which is always nice to welcome the players back for pre-season training when they get back at it next weekend. And
next Monday, right?
Yeah, they're officially back in on Saturday for their medicals and everything like that, and then out on the pitch, next Monday. So there could be some rude awakenings if there's any new sort of South American signings or anything. One person that is new and is certainly around the Whitecaps right now is new CEO Mark Panis. And I just thought, if we're talking front office, there's no other person I can speak to the front office about than your good self, Zach. What did you make of the Panis announcement? It was a bit of a surprise, kind of came a little bit out of the blue, I felt.
Well, yeah, I can't remember when it was, but a month or two ago or whatever, or a while ago, I think Weber was talking about how, there are also this potential new CEO coming in, and then that kind of, there wasn't a lot around that at the time, and I think that was the only person who was really talking about that. But I usually enjoy when Mark is right, I think this is a positive thing for the Vancouver Whitecaps. I mean, when you talk about the people who've been kind of playing the role of the face of the club from an executive level, you're talking about Bobby Lenarduzzi, you're talking about Rachel Lewis, and you're talking about Greg Anderson. And although they need to be applauded for the success they brought, they helped bring the club in the pre-MLS era, and they need to be applauded for helping getting the club into MLS. I don't think you can look at the MLS era and see it as anything but disappointing from an executive level down to on the field. And so like not taking away from things that are in the past, and of course, in particular, Bobby Leonarduzzi and all his contributions to Canadian, BC, and Vancouver football. Not taking anything away from that, but I don't think the role that was played from those people in the MLS era was just good enough, right? Like when you talk about football, you're talking about results. You're talking about what's happening on the pitch, what's happening, with the club, and the results just haven't been good enough from virtually everywhere you want to look at it. And so I think that the fact that there's a new freshness, right? So with Bobby being reshuffled or reorganized into his new liaison role, you have him basically replaced with Axel, and now I think you have Greg, or more so Rachel, kind of as the executive face of the club being replaced with, not replaced with, but I think you'll see the face of Mark Panis as more than you will Rachel Lewis, right? She's more with the financial side of things. And so now you have this new face, this new public face, and I think that's a positive thing for the Whitecaps. I don't know the dude well. I don't know a lot about him other than what we've all been told and we've all read. He has North American sporting experience. He has European football experience. He's done a bunch of interviews. He's talked to a lot of people. He's getting out on social media and trying to be very positive. So it seems like a positive move. It seems like a step in the right direction. It seems like they're trying to show at least some ambition on the off-field side, which feels like quite a change. And so I think everyone has to view that as being positive. But in terms of do I expect great things? I mean, from him in that role, time will tell. Like I have no way to kind of guess at that or whatever, because I don't know. Like I don't know any Roma ultras to reach out to and be like, hey, what's your take on this guy? Or hey, he says he stood in your curva with you. Is how true is that? Or what was he like in dealing with you guys? So I don't have any people to connect with on that at this point, although I've kind of reached out to a few people in the Italian football community to see if they know, but I haven't heard back. And so it'll be interesting to see what kind of role, because he's talked a lot about the importance of bringing back people. He's talked the importance about, I think, connecting with new people. He's talked about, being a person who wants to stand shoulder to shoulder with his supporters and be in this with them. And so those are all positive things, right? Those are all, good things. And I think the best way to talk about this moment for Vancouver is there's some glimmers of hope.
I think that is a good way of summing it up. And I mean, I don't want to labour this because I went on about it last week on the show and in my article about it as well, but when you look back at the past decade and you're trying to find the real highlights from 10 years, 9 of them in MLS, it's a struggle to find the real positives. And it's disappointing. It feels like it's been a number of years that have kind of passed us by. They've kind of been wasted. You look at our Cascadian rivals, Seattle, Portland, and I think it's hard not to compare yourself with Portland because we came in at the same time. And you just look at how they've spent, how they've interacted off the pitch, how they've engaged the local community in Portland and throughout Oregon. They've landed an MLS Cup. They've been successful. And then you look at the Whitecaps and you're like, where did it exactly go wrong for the Whitecaps? What happened? Now, I'm not saying a CEO would have solved all those problems because, as you know, some of it's very hit and miss. But we tried. We had Paul Barber. Things didn't get off to a great start with him. It was a very prickly relationship, especially with the supporters. This feels different, and this feels already like, you can't take anything but the positives from it.
Yeah, and I know everything I say, some people are going to just might feel it's a bit too harsh or whatever, but like my perception is this: the closer you were to the inner workings of the Whitecaps, the more negative your perception is. So when you look at when you look at the supporters who spent time in meetings and trying to work with and get things done or whatever, when you talk to most of them, it was almost like the more time you put in, the more negative your perception is of the club and how it was run and the people who were responsible for that. So I agree with you that when you look back at the MLS era, it is hard to find things that were great standout highlights. Obviously, there are some, but a lot of them are like small things, like a nice goal from an amazing player or whatever, or a couple nice victories or whatever. But like actual success that was like foundational and to build on, it's really lacking in that.
Yeah, because I mean that's the thing. Like most of the highlights were like individual moments or goals, and any club around the world, a non-league club in the UK, at the end of 10 years could go, oh, this was a highlight, this great goal that this one guy scored. And it's actual success, it's actual silverware, growing the fan base. And I mean, Mark Panis has come in and he's talked. I mean, he's ambitious. You can certainly say that. You look at him talking about the stadium and the fact that we know the Whitecaps, whether you want to say it was maybe artificial sellouts or not because a ticket sold, etc., etc., but for the majority of their 9 seasons in MLS, the games have sold out. Yes, it's been a shorter or a smaller attendance at BC Place and BC Place holds, and folk have always been about, open it up, do this, do that, which to me would have been foolish because you'd have just had a wide open stadium with so many empty spots. But Mark Panis is already talking about expanding and growing that fan base from the 21,000, the 22, the 25, and like growing it, maybe opening the whole lower bowl, maybe starting to open the upper bowl. Is that too ambitious, or is that something that you think we could be a Seattle, we could be an Atlanta, we could pack our stadium both lower tier and upper tier?
Yeah, I don't see that happening in Vancouver for a while, and I don't see that happening in Vancouver with the limited designated player budget that ownership has bestowed upon the people responsible for that, namely Axel and MDS. Long term, yeah, sure. And I'd rather someone like Panis say that now, say, hey, in an ideal world, this is where we want to go, right? You want someone to say that. And I give him the benefit of the doubt because he's new. And, if one of the older people in terms of their time at the club was saying that, I don't think it would hold any value, to be honest. But because it's a new person, it's the kind of ambition you want. You want someone in that role to say. I think that even though to get over, this year I think the average dropped to like 19,000 and change. But to get over 20,000 at BC Place is maybe not an achievement, but it was a good level. I think when you look back, aside from the player acquisition side of things and aside from the results on the pitch, I think that a fair criticism is that they could have done more to fill the lower bowl on more occasions than the times that they did. But that has to do, I think, in part, at least with your pricing structure and how they approached that and how they went about that. I think they definitely could have done things differently that could have led to more matches that were more actually full.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing that Panis talked about as well. He wants to grow the brand internationally, make them a kind of global name. Now, Paul Barber was ridiculed, and it's still kind of become a popular comment that we always make fun of about saying the Whitecaps to be one of the top 25 clubs in the world. Now, Mark Panis isn't quite making as bold a statement, but he is saying that they can become an international name, target the Asian market, the African market, the Commonwealth, the Pacific Rim. And I mean, that is all fantastic. And one thing that I find it really interesting, and it wasn't really picked up upon, I thought, too much by the media afterwards, is a little snippet that Jeff Mallett let slip, which is that in the past, if you wanted to market yourself overseas, it had to be through the league. But the league have now said that clubs can market themselves and make money and do revenue streaming and everything themselves overseas now. And I think that's a big, big step for a number of these teams. And the Whitecaps could genuinely capitalise on that. If they brought in players like a Japanese player, you get the Japanese market. An African player, you get players in that, or fans in that market. It's an interesting development and a new direction, I think, for MLS.
Yeah, I mean, new directions are important. It's interesting that is an area where they're not sticking together as a league, because I wonder if that can or will give an unfair advantage to certain clubs.
Yeah.
What they'll be able to do in terms of bringing in revenue to help them in specifically areas like designated player spending.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, if Zlatan was still at LA, imagine how
yeah.
marketable that is, and it's like you don't want the rest of the league to benefit from that if you're an LA fan or LA executive, but the rest of the league would want to.
Which is weird too, because I know like leagues around the world, like you think of the Bundesliga, right, or that English league, right? They although the clubs obviously are doing things individually, they, when it comes to like I think you said streaming rights or whatever, those things are all done league wide, right? So you don't like Bayern's not selling streaming rights in Asia. It's the Bundesliga as a whole is selling the streaming rights in Asia, and Bayern gets a piece of that. But so I mean, regardless, you think like a club like Vancouver could take advantage of that, right? Like even in the moment, if for example, Inbom Wong doesn't leave this winter or doesn't leave this summer, you think they'd be able to market themselves in Korea, and maybe see some fruit from that. In the time when Kai Kamara's here, you think they could do some marketing in Africa or whatever, and then you think, well, the South Americans that have been here, right? How fruitful is that? I don't know. Maybe there's too much investment up front to make that fruitful. But that would be it's kind of a double-edged, maybe potentially a double-edged sword, right? Because you need to invest to actually to get something from that. And like Vancouver right now, we were talking about this offline at you, Steve, and I about. It seems like there's a lot of turnover going on at the club anyways. It seems like there's a lot of positions they're trying to bring people in for anyways at the moment. To do new things like this, they probably have to bring in even more people. So I don't see them unless they planned for that in last year's budget, or like budgeting for this year. I can't see them being able to really take advantage of that for another year.
And the one thing I hope that doesn't happen is that you just bring in players because you think, I can market in that country. Because that's how it felt in Martin Rennie's first year, where you were like, we've got a Japanese player, tick that box. We've got a Vietnamese player, tick that box. We've got YP Lee. There we've got the Korean fans on board. We've got a Scottish guy. We've got an English guy. That's not how you build a successful team on the pitch. It might get you great sponsorship opportunities or interest overseas, but you need to really tread carefully with that, and I'm sure they won't make that mistake, because Mark Panis seems like a guy that's really switched on and really clued in. And some of the stuff that he's done at the New York Knicks, just reading about that, and some of the stuff that he's done with AS Roma, he seems really, really business savvy, and I think that's the big difference. Like, we're not talking about like him and Schuster necessarily replacing Bobby and Rachel one for one, like for like. But you're bringing people in that's got a background in sport. And I know Bobby's got a background as a player and as a coach, but a lot of people that have played the game can't coach. A lot of coaches can't be executives and get into administrative sides. And if you're a chief financial officer, but you don't have a background in sport, I think that does hamper you a little bit. So it's nice that they're actually, I think, bringing in football people, sports people. Panis has worked in the NBA and he's done investment portfolios and he's worked in Serie A. This is a big thing. It's a big, big change.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rachel Lewis did some stuff with tennis before the Whitecaps. But
that's not a real sport.
No, but yeah, I agree with you. It is a big change, and it is, again, it should bring hope. What will be on the other end of that hope? Obviously, time will tell. But yeah. It is definitely an interesting time in terms of what's going on off the field right now. I mean, the on the field stuff still feels like, this is like whatever, midway through January, and it doesn't feel great.
No, there's some alarm bells ringing.
No, yeah, it seems like Lucas Cavallini, that's nice, right? And for those who have been following him and have following him with the men's national team, especially, it's nice, but it's still this promise they made, make people excited by the end of January. I don't know that they'll lose a ton of people, but it doesn't feel like I like. There's not a lot of excitement about what's going to happen on the field yet. I don't feel.
Yeah, and that...
Do you feel like they've done enough?
Right now, no. Because you look, and it's like, who have you added? You've added Cavallini, you've added 2 draft picks. We're going to talk to Steve later on the show about the rumours of Christian de Jong, the winger, and Eric Doy looks like he's re-signed. That's not... I mean, it's not even enough to give you a team that is going to drastically rise up the table, and that's what they're needing, because for all the talk about growing globally and internationally, you have to grow locally first. You have to get a winning team on the pitch. That gets the fans in. That gets the interest in the media. That gets people watching at home excited and wanting to talk to their friends and go to the game and maybe get tickets and increase the fan base. That all starts on the pitch. And as things are going just now, it looks like it could be another long slog of a season. And it doesn't... After the season we had, to be more excited about the stuff off the pitch than on it is not a good feeling in my book.
No. And it doesn't help that you have players like Inba Bong and Ali Adnan.
Yeah.
Continuing talking publicly about how they want to be in Europe.
Yeah, and I mean, there's 2 of your DPs and the 2 guys that you could market internationally.
Yeah. Are their comments in any way comparable to what Kendall Waston said when he was here?
Well, see, that's an interesting point, because he did say that he wanted to leave, but he said it locally, whereas these guys are saying it back home to their journalist. But I guess, yeah, I mean, if you look at it, there isn't actually that much of a difference. I think Kendall was held up to higher values just because he was the club captain. But no, I mean, any player saying they want to leave and go to Europe, although Kendall didn't say that, he just said he wanted to move on. No, that's a fair point.
I mean, obviously there's different histories, and so the players are treated differently and stuff, but as I keep on seeing these things come up again and again, especially Inbaum, like the other day or whatever, it came up again.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, sure, you might be playing to your local media back home, but like those comments are not good. Like, the Whitecaps communication department is not happy.
Well, it's hard to, like, if you're marketing the team around these guys and they're your 2 DPs, if they were to leave right at the end of, say, the European transfer window, then you've got the Whitecaps scrambling to fill some key positions, whereas they're already... I don't want to say they're scrambling because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes and what players are lined up and what players might come in February once the English and European windows close and stuff like that. And our window doesn't even open until the second week of February. But if you lose 1 or 2 of them big players now, and you're having to fill that as well as some starters and a lot of depth, that is not what we were told. It's like we were told most of the team would be in place by the start of pre-season, and we're now 5 days away from that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if I can't see, I don't see either of them leaving in the winter.
No, I don't either.
It could happen, but I don't see that happening. But the fact that they're talking about it, I think it just does not help build excitement for the team.
No, and I think...
I don't begrudge them the desire to play in Europe, obviously. But in terms of, like, people who just garnering excitement for the Vancouver Whitecaps, your two of your most key players talking about how they can't wait to get to Europe doesn't help, especially those who maybe like the Whitecaps but aren't really integrated into the football community, right?
Yeah. And I guess the difference as well, like a lot of European clubs don't like to make too many additions in the winter window, so they do wait until the summer. And then that gives these players 6 months, well, not even 6 months, but maybe 3 or 4 months to show in Vancouver, yeah, look, we are worthy of going on to bigger and better things. But I mean, you've had Schuster coming in and talking about that is really the way forward. They want to bring players in that use MLS as a stepping stone and then get a bigger and better move to Europe or wherever. So, I mean, when you are talking about that, I think it's something that fans are just going to have to accept, is if this plan comes off, we're going to see this maybe not every season, but pretty regularly.
Yeah, and that'd be fine if you saw more of those things happening and more of those funds being reinvested into the squad, right?
Yeah.
So when people look at it and they're like, okay, Alfonso went for 13 to 22 million, and they see only so far. I'm not saying this is all that went into the playing side, but when people only see Lucas Cavallini coming from that, or only Lucas Cavallini, Inbom Wong, and Jasser Kamiri or whatever, coming from that, they're looking at them. They're saying, okay, well, where's the other half of this money going? You know what I mean? So if it's not reinvested, then that whole ethos, that whole approach, kind of falls flat or will eventually collapse, right? And so that way of doing things is done by 75 to 90% of the football clubs around the world, right? That's how they function, or how they keep things going. But you have to be able to do it and do it well. I also want to say that Axel and MDS might have certain things lined up that either they're going to pull off by the end of January, or even these next 5 days, or by February 29th or whatever. That might be great and might fill out the squad in great ways. But it's hard to see that happening based on our previous experiences.
And if we're really lucky, there'll be a strike, and then we've got even longer to try and get our players.
Well, I mean, I think we've said this on the show before. I think, and I think you and Steve share a similar view, that the players really need to hold out for what they desire.
Absolutely.
A strike, although it hurts everyone, I think might be the only way for them to get the things that they really, really want, and they should hopefully be willing to do that.
An interesting thing, now this might just have been a slip of the tongue, language, or whatever from Axel after his draft scrum, where he was talking about the pre-season, players coming in, and then he said, if we go to San Diego. So, we know that the plans are for San Diego, but he said, if we go to San Diego, and of course the San Diego trip is right around when the CBA runs out, so maybe they are getting word through that pre-season's going to be disrupted a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of little slips lately.
Yeah, I like that. I like reading into things that's maybe not actually true. That's why we have a show. We have 2 hours to fill. We have to do stuff like that. So just before you go, I just want to ask you possibly about another little slip that was kind of let go during the Mark Panis introduction. Jeff Mallett was there, and he was talking about the World Cup 2026, the Whitecaps' 7-year plan to take them up to that, which is refreshing to hear all in itself. But then he kind of mentioned about Vancouver being a part of the World Cup. Then when he was pushed on that, said, I meant our players being part of the team that took place then. So that was interesting, and you thought, okay, maybe that was just a genuine slip. Then there was an article on Yahoo, which we were talking about before we recorded, and we didn't know Yahoo was still a thing, but apparently Yahoo is still a thing. And of course, Jeff Mallett, a guy that set up Yahoo. But Yahoo Sports mentioned they had an article talking about the cities that were going to get whittled down to the 10 hosting cities in America. Not that interesting. But then they talked about the Canadian cities of Toronto, Montreal and Edmonton, and then threw in that there's strong murmurs that Vancouver could be about to oust Edmonton and get back in the mix. And when I was actually through in Calgary for the Cavalry Whitecaps game back in July, and talked about this on the show after I came back as well, speaking to a couple of people there, they were saying that the chatter in and around Edmonton was that they were in danger of pulling out of being one of the bidding cities financial-wise, because the cost of trying to get the infrastructure and especially the transit links from the airport to downtown and having the transit around the city was going to be prohibitive of them from being one of the World Cup cities. It was just simply a case, they looked at what it was going to cost, what the benefits were going to be to the city, and the word in the street at the time was that there was a lot of people in government there that were having serious second thoughts about it, and they were likely to possibly pull out. And if that is what it has all come down to, then that most certainly opens the door to Vancouver. Have you heard anything along those lines? And I mean, I'm excited by the prospect. It'll keep me going for a little bit, but I think everyone hoped this might happen. Is it even feasible or realistic?
Yeah, you remember when you were like in in school in your younger days, and there was like that person you really, really liked, and but you were pretty sure they didn't like you, but then all of a sudden, like, one of your friends came to you and was just like, yeah, I think so-and-so likes you.
How do you know about Andrea Luft? She was German, actually. My interest in German girls started early.
Yeah, that feeling of like excitement, and you're telling me there's a chance, like the Dumb and Dumber quote. I so long for this would be amazing. Having the U20 being here in 2007 was amazing. The Women's World Cup in 2015 here was amazing. I was blessed to be able to go to the World Cup in Germany in 2006 for the Men's World Cup. There's a lot of things about the 2026 World Cup that it being in Vancouver would just make life so much better and so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So obviously I long for this to happen, and I would love it, especially if Canada were to play a game here. So I am hopeful. I haven't heard concrete things where I'm able to say like, oh yeah, like I think there's a lot to this. I think there's potentially something to this, but hopefully in the weeks ahead we can talk more about this, or the months ahead we can talk more about this with some more, hearing more than just murmurs. Maybe hearing a little bit things a little more clearly of the potential for this. But I mean, no offense to Edmonton and the people there. I mean, other than we don't like them. I'm joking. No, I'm joking.
It's all because of the snow.
Yeah. Commonwealth is fine and stuff, but now it doesn't have grass anymore, so it doesn't have that over BC Place, and so it doesn't really have anything over BC Place at all, right? Whether it's size, I think sizes are comparable or really close, and BC Place is closed, so you don't have to worry about the elements, but you can also open the little hole, and you can't compare the cities of Edmonton and Vancouver in a real way, right? Like,
yeah.
And I don't just say that to be biased. If you have the opportunity to bring the world for an event to either Edmonton or Vancouver, I mean, it's not even like a discussion, right? Like, you bring them to Vancouver. And again, I don't say that to be negative about Alberta or Edmonton at all. I enjoy going to games in Edmonton, for the Voyageurs Cup and whatever. I went and saw the Whitecaps play the Galaxy there back in 2007 or 2008.
Oh yeah.
It was. So I enjoy, and I've been to the Women's World Cup there. I've seen the men's national team play. Like, I enjoy going there for games and stuff. But if there's any chance that Vancouver can be a part of this, even if it means Edmonton's out, I mean, other than people living in Edmonton or Alberta, like, I think everyone would see the wisdom in this, right?
I mean, totally. And then you've got the possibility of a group where you're playing games in Vancouver and Seattle, and it's close, and we have the training facilities here. And, I mean, we'll get Prince Harry involved. He's got nothing else to do. He's going to be here. He can get involved in the bid.
Yeah, where's he? Is he moving to Canada?
Yeah, he's going to be one of our co-hosts on the show. I was going to reveal that next week, but I may as well just reveal that now.
Well, he'll be like the only one without a face for radio?
Yeah, but also, because we were looking for someone to paint in the Whitecaps strip, Meghan Markle. There we go. We'll get her.
Oh, my. But no, like, yeah, that actually, you brought up a really good point there, actually. One of the things, if you remember a number of years ago, when people were like, oh, why isn't Vancouver playing any of these friendlies against these big clubs? One of the reasons why clubs didn't want to come to Vancouver was because the lack of, let's call it, top-end football training facilities, right? And now that they have the National Development Center, whatever it's called at UBC, there is an actual kind of a top-end place for football training to happen. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that? Like, I think.
Oh yeah.
Everton
were meant to come and play a game here, apparently. Yeah. Yeah,
they went to Edmonton. They didn't come here because of the training facilities. Was one of the primary reasons. And other teams have done likewise. And so, yeah, that. I mean, other than the fact that it's at UBC and it's way out of the way for virtually everyone, it is a piece that helps when you're comparing cities on for this type of event on that level.
let's dream. We've got to have hope. That's what 2020 is going to be about. We're going to be positive and look on the bright side of everything. Thanks so much for joining us on the phone for this chat. Really enjoyed it as always. We'll be back in the studio chatting in person next week. But just before we go, Zach, just let everyone know where they can find you online.
Yeah, well, you can find me on Twitter at ZacharyAM. Thanks for having me on this way, Michael. I look forward to being in studio with you and Steve again, hopefully next Sunday.
That's great. Take care, man, and we'll chat soon. So some interesting times ahead, I'm sure, off the pitch, and Panis will get to work right away, and he's been very engaging with the fans as well. You can follow him on Twitter at Whitecaps CEO. And it just feels like a refreshing breath of air. And as I talked to Zach a little bit about there, and as I mentioned on the show last week, this is another part, it feels, of Jeff Mallett stamping his direction and his authority on the Whitecaps, and very pleased to see it. Look forward to where that might take us. But of course the Whitecaps' growth off the pitch is very much going to be linked to the growth on the pitch. You have to grow the fan base in Canada, you have to grow the fan base coming to games at BC Place before you can really take this brand off internationally, and that's going to be the work of Mark Dos Santos and Axel Schuster. And we're going to talk about that in the next part. But before we get to that, let's have a little musical interlude. And we're going to bring you the latest song from our January Artist of the Month, German all-girl band Gurr, out of Berlin. And we're going to play you, instead of just a snippet of their song this year, since we're doing things a little bit differently, we're going to actually play you the whole song, because it is a bit of a short song. This is from their 2016 album, In My Head. This is Roller Skate.
Super duper blasted roller skate. At the end, I'm hanging out with my mates. We're a gang, we're the greasers. There's a ride, jumping to the cheaters. Do you hear the sound when I hit the ground? Roller skate, skate, roller skate, skate. It's better with a bike, smash into a face strike. Roller skate, skate, roller skate. To your face strike. Roller skate, skate, roller skate, skate. Roller skate, skate, roller skate, skate. As evil as can be, I say. As evil as can be, I say. As evil as can be. On the roller skate, skate, on roller skate, skate. You can hear the sound as I hit the ground.
And that was Gurr there with a song from their 2016 album, In My Head, Roller Skate. And we'll have more from our Artist of the Month for January next week. Don't think you could go very fast in roller skates in the snowy conditions that we've got just now. A sledge would be the much better thing to have out there just now. But you can certainly go quite fast on roller skates and maybe have a bit of a race against some of the speedy Whitecaps players that we've had over the years, many of them coming through the draft. And it does look like we have another fast one in our first round selection in the 2020 MLS draft, Ryan Raposo. The Whitecaps had the 4th pick in the first round of this year's MLS Super Draft. Raposo was the guy that they went for. Winger stroke midfielder, can play a variety of positions. Canadian lad as well, from Hamilton, Ontario. Spent a lot of time with a number of clubs there, including Vaughan Soccer Club. Had some training stints over in Germany with the likes of Mainz and Hoffenheim. Most recently been at Syracuse University. Spent 2 years there before deciding to come out and put himself forward for the MLS draft, because like many of the young guys that we speak to, especially guys coming out of the draft, his dreams that he's wanted for a number of years now is to be a professional footballer. They have now been realised with the Whitecaps signing him. Generation Adidas deal, so it won't cost the Whitecaps anything in the salary cap. And he looks a really good prospect. Now, Raposo had a very strong start to his 2 years at Syracuse University. 19 goals and 14 assists and 36 starts. 38 appearances overall over the 2 years. He was named to the All-ACC first team as a sophomore in 2019, and he was named to the freshmen's team in 2018. 20 years old, definitely a lot of upside to him, and a lot of promise in the guy. I'm very excited at what he can do with the Whitecaps, how they can bring him on, and just how he's going to kind of fit into Mark DeSantos' side. Got a chance as well to chat with Ryan after Thursday's MLS Super Draft. Got him on the phone after he did all his media duties following the draft, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. So let's hear now from the Whitecaps' newest Canadian, Ryan Raposo. Thanks so much for doing this today, Ryan. I'm pretty sure it's been a bit of a whirlwind day for you. Talk us through what your draft day experience was like.
It was amazing, honestly, to see all my friends and families and coaches and everyone in one place supporting me. It was definitely big time. It made me really happy, and at the end of the day, I'm going to the club that I wanted to go to. I'm staying in Canada, and I'm able to continue to grow the sport here in Canada, so I'm happy.
A lot of the mock drafts that came out before today, it had you coming to Vancouver, so a lot of people had already looked into you and thought that you might end up in Vancouver with them having the highest pick of a Canadian team. When did you first become aware that the Whitecaps were interested in bringing you here?
To be completely honest, I know there was a lot of other teams in the top 10 that were telling my agent that if he's available at that point in time, that we would take him, and I didn't hear anything at all from Vancouver. The funny thing is, Vancouver actually followed me on social media.
Yeah.
Night, very late. So that was kind of interesting. And this morning, I was just telling my parents that, I really hope Vancouver picks me fourth. That's a place that I've never been to, and I'd love to go. So I really had no clue that I was going to Vancouver.
Oh, wow. Because I was watching the video this morning after the announcement was made live, and obviously they had the Whitecap scarf there. Was it a case of having lots of different scarves there just to see? Yeah.
They had every MLS club's scarf there just in case.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. I've always kind of wondered how things like that work out. So, I mean, you're obviously delighted to be here, as you said, and delighted to be staying in Canada. How's your family feeling all about it?
My family, they've actually been to Vancouver. I'm actually the only one that hasn't been there, and they love it. They love the mountains and everything. They've been talking to me about, and I even have my extended family here at my house right now. I'm pretty sure my aunt lived in Vancouver for a bit, so they all speak very highly of the city and the people and the culture. And again, I'm excited to get there and find out myself.
So before we kind of look too much into the future, I kind of want to delve a little bit into the past with you. And what was it like growing up in Hamilton and playing soccer there? And at what age did you know that this is what you wanted to do as a career?
I would say even before I started playing competitively, maybe like 6, 7, honestly. Soccer's always been my passion, and it's never been anything else. As you get older, 16, 17, 18, you get girlfriends and you get your license and this and that. You start to go out. But me, I've never thought of doing anything else than being a professional footballer, whether that's in Canada, USA, or over in Europe. So it's definitely a dream come true that it's happened, but I do know that the work's just started. The fact that I got here and I got the contract doesn't mean much if I can't continue that and perform well and make my family proud. And now it's about trying to get minutes and this and that, and then eventually try and get that second contract. So no, I'm definitely happy.
Now, I mean, you mentioned Europe there, and I think so many of us have now done research on you and your training stints over in Germany. Being in that environment and then seeing what it's like, because it is different over in Europe. As you can probably tell, I'm from Scotland, so I mean, things are very different over there, and the passion for the game and folk, yeah, they live and breathe it. So did that just make you, did that just cement for you that this is what you want for your life? And how did you find the whole German experience?
So, I mean, I was around 15, and here in Hamilton, there's no real soccer player to look up to other than my older brothers. So when I moved out to Germany at around 15, instantly fell in love with the country and culture, and I knew, that's, here in Canada, especially in Hamilton, growing up, it was always hockey, and, the little Asian kid playing soccer was always shunned kind of thing because they see no real future in that. So when I moved out to Germany, it was an amazing experience. Definitely the hardest time of my life so far. As you know, with European soccer, it's completely different culture, different atmosphere than North American. It's very hostile, right? You're going there and you're taking food off their plates, and that's how they take it. So growing up and understanding that, I mean, I lived by myself, 15 years old, living in a basement.
Oh, wow.
So I've gone through kind of like those growing pains of being a quote-unquote pro, and I understand what's ahead of me. Definitely playing in Vancouver will be an easier place, and but it'll still be very, very tough, and it's a professional environment. I'll have to perform because everyone's fighting for that starting 11 spot, fighting for that 18 spot. So I know I'll just have to continue to do what I do and just keep my head down and work hard. That's about it for me.
Now, I know you've been involved with some youth camps with Canada. Do you know any of the Whitecaps players at all? Have you kind of come across them in your travels?
No, I've never met any of them except Theo Bear, actually.
Okay.
Him and I played together at youth level here in Toronto, Ontario. And I know we know of each other, and we've played with each other a couple of times. But for the other national team players, obviously you guys bring in Cavallini and whatnot. I've never met or played with them.
Now, I mean, I know you were involved a little bit with TFC Academy for a while. How did you end up at Syracuse? I mean, I'm always curious how people end up at all the different universities. Was it that they just offered you a good scholarship?
So TFC released me when I was around 11. Was staying local with club coach here, and then I made a move to a Toronto-based team at around 16, 17, Vaughan, and they actually produce a lot of professional players.
Yeah,
a lot of professional players, and the coach there, Patrice Geyser, I mean, he's coached some of the best players in Canada, such as Kamal Miller, Dane Sinclair. He went to Minnesota last year. He coached Osorio at Toronto FC, and we actually had four Vaughan guys going in the first round today. Obviously, me at 4, Alistair Johnson at 11. Niall Higgins at 19, and Dayon Harris at 20. So these are all guys I've played with growing up, and we all Patrice helped us all get scholarships into the States, and then from there, I knew from day one that my end goal would try and sign a contract with Adidas, and I'm just grateful that it all worked out. Yeah,
and I mean, looking at your time there, you're had 2 years there. They seem to have gone really well. You're averaging a goal every 2 appearances, which is phenomenal. How did you find that jump from going to youth soccer to college level, and then how tough do you expect it to be now to make the jump from college into the pro game?
It's tough. Honestly, scoring goals in college is tough, and it's obviously very, very different than youth soccer. It's much more physical, fast-paced. You have a lot of athletes involved, so more so for me, being a smaller guy, it's using my brain and using my head, trying to be in the right spot at the right time, and that types of thing. So I definitely know that at the next level, it will be even tougher, right? But this is something that I'm mentally and physically prepared for. And I know it's going to take time to adapt. It takes everyone a bit of time to adapt, but I'm confident in myself and my abilities and my tactical awareness. And, you know, again, soccer is my passion. I study it. When I'm not playing soccer, I'm watching it and studying it. So I'll be comfortable in whatever position I end up playing. So, yeah.
You have been asked this a lot. It's like you've come out after your sophomore year, 2 years at college.
Right.
It's obviously it's a major decision to do that. How long did you have to kind of debate doing that, or did you make your mind up quite easy that you wanted to just go for it this time round? Because I know a lot of folk maybe wait to third year, a lot or fourth year. What made you decide to do that now?
Again, it's been my number one goal since I was a kid to be a professional footballer. You know, I got some professional contract offers when I was in Germany. So I was either playing in Germany or signing with Syracuse and going for GA. So it's been on my mind since day one at Syracuse University that if Generation Adidas ever came around, that I would definitely choose it. And yeah, I thought I did what I had to do on the field, and I performed at the combine, had one of the faster 40-meter dashes. I scored in the match. So it's all about doing the best you can do, and yeah.
I mean, I think it's been a good decision, and I think you've landed at a good club because Mark DeSantis is a guy that he likes to give young players opportunities, and especially Canadians as well. What's the chat? I don't know how much chat you've even had with Mark so far, but where does he kind of see you fitting in? Has he told you? Does he see you more as a winger? Does he see you more as a midfielder, or maybe a striker off the bench?
I'm actually hopping on the phone with him tonight.
Oh,
me briefly to congratulate me and welcome me to the club. Same with some guys, board directors at the club, just messaging me and congratulating me, and that we will get on the phone later. But yeah, I see myself at the next level as a winger, any attacking position, left, right, attacking midfielder, even in the a wing back, left wing back, right wing back, false nine. I think I could fit in all these positions.
That's fantastic, and we certainly need wingers here just now. We're in short supply of those, so I really wish you all the best. I'm really glad that Vancouver's picked you. Thank you so much for your time today, Ryan. I know it's been a busy day for you. Look forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks, and congratulations, man.
Alrighty, thank you so much for having me. Take care. See you soon.
See you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Getting drafted and I know it. Getting drafted and I know it. Getting drafted and I know it.
Ryan Raposo there, talking all things about his life and his hopes for the future, and definitely a very exciting prospect. We'd looked at last week's show a number of the guys that the Whitecaps may have decided to take in the draft, and Raposo was the one that stood out. He'd been linked to the Whitecaps in a number of mock drafts, and part of it will have been the Canadian aspect of it, obviously, but with what he brings to the team just now, as I mentioned to him there, we're short of wingers, we're needing some wingers, and if he wants to get played in the wing, if he wants to be played more in a midfield role, he can play as a 10. Lots of possibilities for him. It's a great chance here for him to kind of establish himself in the team and make a name for himself, and just add to the number of exciting young Canadian talent that the Whitecaps have here just now. But it's fine to talk to Ryan about his time at Syracuse and his time in Germany, his hopes for the future, everything like that. I think the burning question, though, that everybody really wanted to know was, did he fancy a chocolate digestive? Do this with every player that comes to the club. It's kind of our traditional thing on our show. So you're not a Whitecap until we do this with you. If you're sitting at home and you decide to have a hot beverage, what would be your hot beverage of choice? Tea, coffee, or something else?
I would honestly say espresso. I enjoy my espresso.
Excellent. And then, are you a kind of biscuits fan, of cookies? Do you like those?
Yeah, I like a good chocolate chip cookie. Good oatmeal cookie, honestly. I really like oatmeal cookies.
And are you a dunker?
It depends. If I have a coffee, I'll definitely dunk, but if it's just an espresso, I'll quickly have my espresso and then eat my cookie in peace.
Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive, even though it's unsuggestive? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive?
So no chocolate digestive for Ryan Raposo there, but oatmeal cookies it is. Good to see he likes the dunk. So looking forward to seeing how Ryan's going to fit into the Whitecaps this season. We'll get our first look at him pretty soon when preseason camp gets underway. It's maybe going to be a little bit of bare bones, I think, when the preseason camp gets underway. But joined now on the phone by Steve, who is going to kind of chat with us a little bit about some of the additions that have been made this week and what may be to come as well. So thanks for joining us, Steve. Now, the Whitecaps, we talked on last week's show that we hoped that the Whitecaps would have 1 or 2 new players, assuming that they didn't trade away their draft picks, and they didn't. They stayed with them. Their first round pick, 4th overall, Ryan Raposo. Just played some audio from him there. He sounds like a young lad that's really got his head screwed on and he's excited to come here. We talked about him a little bit in last week's show. It's now he's the guy that the Whitecaps went for. It seemed like a bit of a no-brainer. Generation Adidas, a Canadian guy, a winger, kind of ticks all the boxes really that they were needing.
Yeah, essentially everything they needed for like a depth standpoint. I don't expect him to come in and be a starter, but he can definitely play, maybe be in the 18 eventually, and play different roles. Like you said, winger, but people have also talked about being a number 10, where he can drive the ball, and he scored quite a bit of goals. If you see his highlights from Syracuse, you'll see that he came in and he basically scored a lot of goals off the wing, but also in the middle, playing that number 10 role. Now, obviously, number 10 role coming from college to the pros is not going to be easy to adapt to, so you don't want to push him in that. So starting out at the wing is fine, but then eventually the wing number 10 could be a position down the road that he could play.
Yeah, I mean, the Whitecaps officially in their press release mentioned that he was a midfielder. And when we spoke to him there just now, he mentioned he can play on the wing, he can play as a 10, he can play as an 8, he can even play as a 6. So a very versatile young guy. And, I mean, it gives the Whitecaps a lot of options. And we've seen it before with players coming out of college. They might come out of college used to one position, but then once they get into the pros, they develop into something else. But his goal-scoring record, he's averaging a goal in college every 2 games. And I don't care what level you're playing at, that's pretty impressive. And he looks like he's going to add a spark that the Whitecaps need. And having someone like him coming off the bench, so versatile as well, could be really good for them this year.
Yeah, for sure, and especially considering we don't know what's going to be in the lineup right now, it's good to have one of those versatile players that can play multiple positions. But I think the wing is obviously the best position. You talked about his goal scoring, but he is very good at setting up.
Yeah.
His teammates on passes. I think he's got a pretty good assist record too. But I think the overall thing for him is to just, like you said, come in, work hard, learn the system. I think he's got enough dynamic ability where he can play MDS system, where he can push up the field, drive the ball up the field, and also put pressure on the players up the field as well, on the defenders.
Yeah, and for most of the last college season at Syracuse, he was playing as a 10, and his assists record is very, very impressive. Now, we've talked about it on the show before. A lot of the success that the Whitecaps have really had in the draft have kind of come more on the defensive side, but we've had some exciting young attacking talent, varying degrees of success. I mean, Darren Matic's still playing in the league, and he's had success possibly more away from Vancouver than he had at it. Kekuta Mane, Eric Hurtado, he's now kind of had a bit of a new lease of life in sport in Kansas City. Do you think it was sensible to go for a midfielder, a winger with their first pick, or would they maybe have been better to try and get some defensive sort of backup for left back or right back position?
I think the guy that they were possibly looking if it wasn't Raposo was Dylan Nealis.
Yeah.
I think we talked about him last game. But he went third overall to pick the 4. I don't know how much they would have gone after him, but he kind of fit what they needed. But I think the winger position was fine. The problem is if they went after one of the central defenders that was available or a striker. At this point, I don't know how much they're going to see the pitch, because if you think of it, you got Cornelius, you got Karimi, and then you got Godoy, who's essentially sounds like he's coming back. So you got 3. So if you bought a central defender, he would have been 4th on the depth chart. How much is he going to have effect on the team this year? If you get a striker, like there was a guy that just arrived, like I didn't hear much about him, DK or something like that.
Yeah.
He was available too, but then you got Cavallini that just came in. If they bring him in, like there's other players that could. And you got Montero still in the lineup, so they really had a lot of strikers at this point, and with Ricketts too. So this is a position, a winger. They needed some depth. They didn't have really, and he can play, like we said, he can play inside too. So it's not like he's just playing on the wing. He is versatile. He can play inside. He can, if they change formations, if they go, a 4-1-3-2 or whatever they decide to do, he can play in that secondary striker role. So I think he's a good, wise pick.
Yeah, and from the audio that we just played with him there, he's got his head screwed on. He knows that it's a big challenge now going on to the pros. He talked about it was different going from youth to college. That was a jump. He knows this is going to be a jump. He's actually had some experience playing in the Voyagers Cup already, because he played for Vaughan Azzurri against Halifax this year in the Voyagers Cup and scored a goal as well. So he has been kind of tested at the higher level and done well. He's done well at the combine as well. He scored a goal. He impressed people. Interestingly, he said there in my chat with him that there was a number of clubs that had picks in the top 10 that had spoken to his agent and said that they were interested in him. And the fact that he was a GA player means that if the Whitecaps hadn't taken him, someone definitely was going to take him early. So I think it's been a good pickup by the Whitecaps, and we'll really just have to see how he progresses as the season goes on. But I'm looking forward to seeing him. It does sound from speaking to him that if he hadn't got that GA contract, he wouldn't have come out of college early either. So, yeah. I mean, that's good for him. The second pick that the Whitecaps had on Thursday, this one surprised me a little bit, I've got to say, because when you look at the wealth of goalkeeping talent that's come through the Whitecaps in recent years, you would have thought drafting a goalkeeper would have been quite low down their pecking order. But Axel Schuster said afterwards that was the position they were looking to fill. It seems surprising to me.
I don't find it as surprising. I think this guy is like he's not like a young guy. He's a 22-year-old. He's a graduate student, so he doesn't need to go back to school the rest of the year. You got Thomas Hassel as your number 3 keeper. I don't feel very comfortable visiting him a number 2 right off the bat. Yeah. He's still very young, so why not bring in a draft pick who, honestly, there's been a lot of draft picks that are goalkeepers that are able to play a backup role and play spot duty. And if they solidify their defense, maybe they don't need the keeper as much to make those huge saves or multiple saves that Kurt Bode had to. It's not a huge surprise for me, but I think he was like the 4th or 5th goalkeeper, so I'm not sure how good he is. He seems like he has a decent record in college. He's a redshirt senior, so that means he's been in school for like 5 years. So he's had, I think probably the last 3 years was when he really starting a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what he's like as well. MDS has indicated that he's going to give him the chance to earn that backup role. Yeah. And, I mean, even if he doesn't, there's going to be other goalkeepers out there that I'm pretty sure that they can pick up. And it's really only going to become an issue anyway if Crépeau gets injured. Of course, he could be away on international duty and stuff like that as well. But, I mean, Crépeau's going to be the guy that starts between the sticks. And, I mean, Hassel's a good keeper. Maybe give him the Canadian Championship games and just have a look at him as well. But, I mean, you never know. This might be an opportunity for them to loan Hassel out as well to maybe get minutes somewhere.
And we don't know if Hassel's still not they're considered a backup keeper right
True.
So until they get to camp to figure out where they're going to be, then, at this point, it's probably up for grabs whoever the backup is.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in camp last year, everyone thought McMath was going to be the number one, and then it ends up that Raposo, the guy that earns that. I mean, talking about loaning young players out as well, there was a couple of murmurs going around this week online that Simon Colline had been over at PSV Eindhoven, and he seems to have impressed over there, and he might be going over there permanently. There's also been some murmurs as well that the Whitecaps are going to sign Damiano Pissarro to a homegrown contract, but then loan him out as well to get some playing time in Europe. So, I mean, that might be the kind of modus operandi just now for the club with their young guys.
Yeah, because they may be sending them to Europe on loan in their academy teams or in their reserve sides. Maybe that is the better option. It is a kind of little bit higher standard than what CPL might be, at least at the same age level. But it is another avenue for them to try to develop players, and they could start giving that person's spot to somebody else coming up the roster and then up the ranks and everything. So it kind of gives it a little bit more players in their system at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and Raposo talked about his time over in Germany as well, and it really helped kind of shape him to be both the player and the man that he is today, because when you go over there as a young guy, especially as a Canadian, you really have to fight for your spot. And as Raposo said, it's like he's there trying to take the food off the table of the local guys, so they don't like him, and some of them weren't that friendly towards him and wouldn't even pass the ball to him in training and stuff like that. So if you can go over there and impress and do well and handle all that, I mean, it sets you up so well for a pro career.
Definitely, and I just can't believe that Germans aren't nice to people from outside.
I know, it's shocking. I mean, yeah, I'm stunned.
Yeah.
Now, talking of Germans, one of the nice Germans is, of course, Axel Schuster. And Schuster was talking after the draft on Thursday, and we won't go into too much of what he said, but one of the big revelations was he was asked about putting the squad together. He said he feels they're on the right track, and he confirmed that there would be a minimum of 2 more players signing before pre-season camp gets underway on Saturday. Now, that's a marked change of tone from, first of all, MDS, and then Schuster saying that they hope to have, if not all, but the majority of their squad in place for when pre-season kicked off. Now we're looking at Cavallini, 2 draft picks, and possibly 2, maybe 3 signed players coming in as well. Is that a worry, or is it maybe an indication that they've just not been able to get some deals over the line yet?
It's probably, I wouldn't say it's a worry at this point, because they do have a kind of a skeleton squad. They do have some kind of squad going on right now. It's just a matter of filling it out a lot. It seems like to me, and it's just speculation on my part, seems like to me that they don't have those players that they want, and maybe those are the deals that fell through, and so they're just going to try to fill in the roster, get the players they want, and then eventually maybe, like we talked about it a couple times in December, maybe the players they want are waiting for the January transfer window to happen to see what their other options are.
Yeah.
Those deals fall through. Maybe they come in early February or something like that. That could be a possibility too. So, and unfortunately for the Whitecaps, they put that deadline, I think, at the end of January or something like that before trading camp. So maybe they should have extended to the end of February or something like that. But that's going to happen. In any case, the Whitecaps have to realize that that deadline, that thing, money back guarantee or whatever they put in there, that was just to keep people in right now at this point, so that they kept their money paid up. I personally think that the attendance next year is going to be really down, and they have to expect that after the years they've had now, last couple of years. It's a matter of now putting everything together and actually showing what they can do instead of promising what they can do. And maybe people start coming back. There's maybe more walk-up attendance or something as the season goes on. That's what they have to do. They have to show it on the field before people are willing to put their money down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. They have to earn this trust back from a large section of the fan base, and the way to do that is to put a a winning team on the pitch, an exciting to watch team on the pitch. And I mean, Mark Panis can talk about growing the club internationally, but as we talked about in the first part with Zach, you've got to get locally sorted out first, and you've got to have a team on the pitch that will help to do that. Now, I mean, one of our local rivals that has done that, of course, is Seattle, and Garth Lagerwey was on a conference call and speaking to journalists this week, and he kind of indicated that they're going to be quite cautious in this transfer window because they just don't know what's happening with the CBA. I mean,
the TAM, right? Because you talked about there wasn't that many trades in the draft. That's maybe because they don't know what's going on with TAM, so they didn't want to trade it. Because normally every year it's like a lot of that gets traded. Instead of that, maybe the Whitecaps couldn't get anything for that was equivalent to previous years, and that's why they decided to just draft somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that all the teams are just waiting just now to see, A, if there's going to be a strike, B, if there's not, what's happening with GAM, TAM, designated players and everything. So I think we're going to be in for a very, very busy February, assuming that there isn't a strike. So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens there.
Maybe that's another thing that's causing delays in signing. But although other teams are signing players left, right, and center, but they had more of their core already set up. So other teams are just adding on players to their core. Even at Kansas City, I don't think they've signed that many players, and they were looking to revamp everything. So it's interesting to see who's signing a lot of players and who's not.
Yeah, totally. And looking just as the last thing, I mean, Axel talked about a minimum of 2 players coming in. It looks like Eric Godoy is going to be one of those guys. I mean, the rumours came out from down in South America media that was a done deal and it's maybe just not been announced yet or whatever. And then this week there's been the interesting transfer saga possibly of Colombian winger Christian de Jome, who had apparently signed a pre-contract with the Whitecaps. Looks like he's going to be a Whitecaps player. A kind of unreliable Twitter online source had kind of said that Corinthians in Brazil had wanted him and he was trying to get out of that pre-contract. Basically, it's not been a reliable source. It does look like Corinthians were interested, but he looks like he's going to be a Whitecaps player. And again, reports from down South America are that it's all been signed, it's a done deal. So I think that the 2 players we might expect to be announced this week are de Jome and Godoy. And I mean, that's 2 exciting additions. De Jome, I know very little about, but if a club like Corinthians are interested in bringing him in, and looking at his kind of record, he's got some goals, he's got a lot of assists. He looks like a great addition, and he's from Colombia, a country which players do notoriously well in MLS. We won't know until we see what he's like. He's never played out with his country before, but on paper and on highlight reel, it looks exciting.
Yeah, and I think he's a winger as well, but he can play different parts of the field, but mostly wing. Just based on his the way he plays and the way he attacks and everything, the way he goes, basically tries to break down the back line. I think it will be exciting. I think he'll also give space to Cavallini because people will be interested in him. There was something on Twitter. I don't remember who tweeted it out, but there was a comparison between him and Chirinos, and it's interesting that the 2 things that are by far he does better is he's better at successfully dribbling over 90 minutes, and his shots over 90 minutes is higher. So the thing is with him is, from the description, again, this is off Twitter, I haven't seen very much. He seems like to be a guy that really goes for the home run, and it can catch him against really good teams that are sound defensively. But the teams that aren't, and most of MLS is kind of loosey-goosey when it comes to defending. So he could really take advantage possibly of that, really teams that don't really pay much attention to defending, and he could really counterattack or just a regular attack onto teams.
It looks to be an exciting addition, so we'll see if that does come through. Training camp gets underway on Saturday, then the media get to speak to the players next Monday as well, so that should be good. So just before we go though, Steve, we spoke to Zach in the first part about the addition of Mark Panis. Just get quickly your thoughts on his addition as CEO.
Obviously, a couple of things about him. AS Roma, he was with the New York Knicks in the 90s. He actually set up quite a few said he was part of the first team to launch their own team-run HD broadcast, and they also he also helped set up the WNBA's New York Liberty, which is the women's side of the Knicks. So it's interesting to see those kind of dynamics. To see, is he going to help? Obviously, he's going to help with the business side of everything, and which they sorely need help in, because they never took advantage of. There's early, like 3-4 years ago, when there were actually people coming to the stadium, never really took advantage of that. But it'd be interesting to see if he run some kind of digital network online or something for the Whitecaps to help with that. And then the fact that he helped set up the women's Liberty team, does he come in and help set up some kind of the women's team here eventually in the women's league, whichever league it's going to run into, maybe CPL?
Interesting, yeah, that would be interesting. Especially curious about the digital side. That might be something worth certainly sitting down and having a chat with him about. But yeah, I mean, it seems a good addition.
It's just interesting to see that the dynamic of the front office changing so much. Because in the interview he had with local media on the radio, he mentioned that it's basically him and Axel Schuster running the club. Axel's for the on field, and him are going to be for the off field. So it's interesting to see what he says there.
So just before we go, let everyone know where they can find you online, Steve.
You can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat.
So cheers to Steve there. I think it's going to be a very busy week in Whitecaps land as we get set for the opening of pre-season camp on Saturday. Players are in for their medical on Saturday, kicking things off on the pitch up at UBC, weather permitting, on the 20th of January. Hopefully the snow's all gone by then. It does look like it's just going to be rain. Will there be a few new faces? Will it just be the two that's been alluded to by Axel Schuster? Or will we have some trialists? A lot to be seen. A lot to, I'm sure, get sorted out in the next week and coming weeks as well. That is pretty much it for tonight's show, but we cannot have an episode of the AFTN Soccer Show without bringing you a Wavelength. If you're a first-time listener, just to quickly explain, Wavelength is our section of the show where we play a bit of music that's football related. It could be by a band, it could be by a footballer himself or some of the teams, and it's the latter category that we're going to feature this week. January's Wavelength songs, we decided we were going to all have an FA Cup theme. And when you talk about FA Cup songs, for me anyway, the thing that automatically springs into your head is the songs that were released by the clubs that were playing in the FA Cup finals over the years. It's a tradition that seems to have gone a little bit by the wayside in more recent years, which is quite sad, because it was always something that teams got to the FA Cup final, they brought out a song, they were on top of the pops over in the UK. Now, some of the songs were pretty dreadful, as you could expect. I think it's fair to say most of the songs were pretty dreadful, but there's a couple of iconic ones, and as much as I hate Tottenham, for me, one of the most iconic FA Cup songs was from 1981, the Tottenham squad, with London icons Chaz and Dave. This was a time when the Tottenham team had the likes of Osvaldo Ardiles and Ricky Villa in it, and they kind of played up a little bit on the Argentinian side of things with their 1981 song, Ozzy's Dream.
Ozzy's going to Wembley, his knees have gone all trembly. Come on, you Spurs, come on, you Spurs. Ozzy's going to Wembley, his knees have gone all trembly. Come on, you Spurs, come on, you Spurs. Come on, you Spurs are on their way to Wembley. Tottenham's gonna do it again. They can't stop them, the boys from Tottenham, the boys from White Hart Lane. Spurs
So that was the Tottenham 1981 squad there with Chaz and Dave, Aussie's dream, Aussies on the way to Wembley. And Tottenham did win the FA Cup final that year with Ricky Villa being the guy that did all the damage for them in a replay. But that is it for this episode of the AFTN Soccer Show. A little bit different from our usual radio show. Hope you've enjoyed it nonetheless. We should be back in the studio as normal for next Sunday's show. The podcast will be out on Monday as usual. I'm Michael McCall. You can give me a follow on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read our stuff on Away From the Numbers, aftn.ca. Also give us a follow on Instagram at AFTN Soccer and YouTube, AFTN Canada. Give us a like, subscribe, share, comment, all those things that we need for the algorithms. But until next week, thanks for listening. Take care, stay out of the cold, and mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.